So hello everyone, thank you for having me here today. Thank you Tammy and GTApreneurs for allowing me to present to you. Just a little bit about myself. So once again, I'm here with Fridmar Professional Corporation. I am the Fridmar in Fridmar Professional Corporation. We are a law firm. We're currently 3 strong and growing, and there's definitely something wrong with this mic. So practically speaking, what I'm hoping to help most of you today with is give you a little bit of education as to the importance and the benefits of early legal consultation for businesses. Now, before we get started, just a show of hands, who's here in their first, let's say, 3 years of business? Just show of hands. 1, 2, 3, decent amount, about a third of the room. Okay, and who's here within, let's say, their first 5 years of business? Well, everyone who's within 3 years is within 5 years, so come on, guys. Okay, and of all the people who've raised their hands, how many of you have entered into a contract? Yeah, anytime you subscribe to Adobe or Amazon, anything, you've signed a contract. And prior to signing those contracts, how many of you have worked with a lawyer to make sure that you have the right contracts? Excellent, yeah, no one, perfect. And that's, one person, and she's hosting, so that doesn't count. Perfect, so and that's exactly what I'm here to speak about today. So a little bit about myself. As you've heard, my name is Dan Fridmar. I am a construction industry lawyer, so I help with individuals in all areas of construction-related matters, such as obviously construction law, civil and commercial litigation, bankruptcy law, mortgages law, real estate litigation, and then more broadly with entrepreneurs such as yourself as far as the business starting advice comes out. So I work with many entrepreneurs, helping them make sure that their businesses are properly structured, whether it's by way of incorporation, partnerships, proprietorships, and then subsequently making sure that they have the right contracts in place. So today, in my 15 or so minutes that I've been allotted, I'm hoping to cover 3 of those grounds. So the first one, once again, is what are some early considerations that you should keep in mind as a new or growing business? And for everyone who's had your hands up, even if you're largely successful, which hopefully you are, you're a growing business. And if you're here today, that means you're trying to grow your business even more. We're then going to talk about some of the common pitfalls that are faced by new or growing businesses. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how early and ongoing legal services are instrumental in your success, not only in the short run, but more importantly for the long run of your business. So some early considerations, and as I mentioned that I run into with many of my clients, is people aren't sure what kind of business model they want, right? Some people are looking to hang their shingle, some people are tired of being employed and yelled at, and so they want to start out on their own. But before they do that, they don't stop and think about the long-term implications. For those of you who may be a sole proprietor, what does it mean, for you down the road if you want to sell your business? What does it mean for your tax implications? What does it mean for your legal liabilities, right? Similarly with a corporation or partnership, how big do you want it to be? Are you going to be someone where it's going to be a one-person show within a corporation, or are you eventually going to be issuing more than 50 shares, or for 50, having more than 50 shareholders? All of these things in making the decision you have to consider. And then one of the other things, as far as clientele goes, right, is you have your business now. Who are you trying to sell to? Are you going to be selling to B2C, B2B, right? If you're selling to customers, specifically consumers, are you compliant with the local regulations, right? Are you compliant with the Consumer Protection Act? Are you compliant with advertising regulations, with other forms of requirements? One of the things that I run into more than anything, especially with my new business clients, is that they're short on budget. And let's be honest, unless you've working with our good friends at Legal Shield, their lawyers are expensive. And so a lot of people look at their early legal costs and say, well, you know what, I have a budget of X amount of dollars, right? And as a result of that, I want to spend my money on growing the business, buying new technologies, renting space, doing whatever I can. And people don't really look at the legal side of it, right? unfortunately, more often than not, people think of law and the legal side of it as a cost center, right? It's something I have to pay for, and what's the real benefit that I'm getting as a result of that? Well, the fortunate part on my end, is, as you can see in my banner there, the majority of my focus centers on litigation, right? And there's two kinds of lawyers, for those of you who are fortunate in not knowing many lawyers in their life. There are barristers and solicitors, or litigators and solicitors. Solicitors are the friendly people that smile at you, and they come in at the front end. They come in when everything's good and sunny, and they try to put contracts for you. They guide you, as I'm trying to suggest to you here today. And then you have barristers, litigators, right? We're the glorified garbage people. People come to us when there are disputes, when things go wrong, when they're being sued or they need to sue someone because they haven't been paid. And so because of that, we're fortunate on learning from the mistakes of others, right? We have people who come to us, we see where they went wrong, and then we're able to internalize that and stretch that out and give it to our incoming clients to say, I experienced X, Y, Z in this case. Here's how you and I can now work together, so you don't end up stepping on the same tools that the other people step on. And so that's a really big part too, in that a lot of people, when they consider the expenses side of it, they're not considering the potential savings down the road, both in litigation as well as making sure that they're protected from an enforcement standpoint. And so similarly, for example, one of the other considerations when starting up your own business is, how are you going to operate? Are you going to operate if you're yourself, are you going to have independent contractors? Are you seeking to grow a larger business? And if so, what kind of employment considerations do you need to keep in mind? And then ultimately, where are you going to operate from, right? Are you going, if you're a virtual digital marketing company or otherwise, and you're incorporating, where are you operating from? Are you operating from your home? Wonderful. Does that mean that that's your registered address? Well, guess what? Now everyone who has access to the Ministry of Ontario has your residential address. So some of the other things that people need to keep in mind. Similarly, if you're in a lease space or a shared space, what are the long-term implications? What if your business doesn't work out in the first 5 years? Now you're stuck with a lease contract. What does that mean for you and your company and your own assets in the future if bankruptcy considerations are in place? And similarly, once again, depending on the industry that you're in, what's your industry-based compliance, right? What are the minimal standards if you're in construction or landscaping renovations, right? What do you have to know in these sorts of things? Are there federal, provincial, or municipal concerns that you may have? What are the consequences for not following some of those regulations or complying with them? And once again, I think one of the biggest pitfalls that I, working both on the bankruptcy side as well as the new business side, is people often forget that they're incurring personal liability if they're not properly protected. And sometimes I have a recent client of mine where we ran into this issue. He incorporated before he started his business, but what he didn't realize is that he didn't register his business name. He operated as one thing, he had a number of companies, his actual corporation, and he didn't realize that for the past 2 years of him operating, whatever contracts he was entering into using that operating as name, realistically meant that he was personally liable, because there was no link between the corporation and his business name. And so fortunately, now that him and I are working together, we've safeguarded him moving forward. But that's one of the things that he could have avoided if he hired a lawyer or spoke with a lawyer at the very outset of forming his business. Similarly, in the event of people working with other people as shareholders or as partners, some people don't consider the exit strategy, right? Corporations and business, to a large effect, are like a marriage. You have to keep in mind what happens if someone's unhappy, and now they're either holding you hostage, or you're otherwise going to hurt the business. Everything that you spent so long and so hard working for is going to be burnt to the ground because two people can't agree. And so these sorts of business considerations are crucial when you're starting that out, because while everyone's happy is when you make these deals come true. Similarly, from a clientele perspective, right? If you have certain operation issues, let's say, for example, and you don't have contracts clearly outlining your scope of responsibility versus what you're not going to do, or things like warranty, things like anything really in terms of your obligations to your clientele, there's a Latin maxim, right there on the screen. It's called contra proferentum, and what that means is that if you're the person selling something to someone else, the contract is interpreted against your favor, which means even if you had no intention of fulfilling some form of obligation at the time that you were entering into the agreement, now that you've run into this issue and your customer is complaining about something or wanting more than what you promised them, you're responsible for doing that. And similarly, if you have any agreements selling on a B2C scale and are not compliant with the Consumer Protection Act, guess what? They have an exit card now where they're not responsible for paying whatever interest you agreed to, or they're not responsible for the payment structure that you set up with. And similarly, a lot of people, they spend too much money, right? They don't consider some of the ways that they can trim down those expenses by making sure that they have those either exit clauses or force majeure clauses. A lot of people ask how my business went during COVID, and especially from the bankruptcy perspective, and I tell each and every one of them that the larger amount of clients that I dealt with because of COVID, because of those force majeure provisions, didn't have adequate clauses in their contracts that allowed them to terminate in the event of stay-at-home orders or whatever they were called. And so all of these are considerations to keep in mind. And similarly, once again, if you ever run into an industry issue, so for those of us in real estate or development or construction, there are very serious fines that the government puts in place for failing to comply with the Building Code Act, with local municipal regulation, noise complaints, those sorts of things. Having someone to give you that education from the forefront means a lot of money in saving down the road. And so once again, the solution here is simple. It may not be the thing you want to spend money on right now, but it's definitely going to sell you and save you a lot of money down the road. And the first and easiest way of ensuring that you're doing this is having proper contracts, right? Having something in place that very clearly establishes the operation, something that clearly outlines your scope of work, outlines what you're responsible for, what you're not responsible for, and more importantly, what happens if things don't end up working out. And once again, anyone, especially in the age of ChatGPT and those AI sources, anyone can create their own template. But at the end of the day, only lawyers can advise and craft something that's enforceable and specifically for your services. And so once again, if I could take one, if I'm done scaring you at this point, if there's one piece of information that I could give to you, is that early advice and early retaining of legal services really does translate to a reduction of liability and cost for you down the road. And once again, this isn't just for those of you who are starting out. It's never too late. It's better late than never to start having these sorts of services to make sure that you're doing things correctly. I recently had a client, he was a drywaller up in Muskoka doing whatever he's been doing for 35 years. Never had a problem until he did. And fortunately for him now, he's a spry chicken, he has his sons taking over his business, and we're now restructuring it in a way that is compliant and he'll never have that problem again. So once again, my information is right there. My name is Dan Fridmar. My booth is right there. If you have any questions whatsoever, or just want to get in touch and chat, there's my number, there's my email, there's my website. Thank you very much, everyone. You have a wonderful rest of your evening.